It's the end of a console life cycle, and so this week on Gaming, Stace Harmon and myself, John Robertson, are putting each other on the spot and asking what are the best games of this generation. Okay, so we've set out some different categories to help us formulate ideas and to provide some more structure for you all to digest our picks and why we've picked them. So, Stace, you want to break down the categories? What sections we've got?
Yeah, so we've got a bunch of categories here to avoid the kind of usual numbered top 5, top 10. So the categories that we're going to be diving into are most played. That's basically just as it sounds. That's just a pure number of hours over those 7 or so years. The most impactful, interpreted however we've seen fit. Our favourite trend of that time. Our favourite new IP. Our favourite legacy franchise, so a returning franchise that's been around for a long time outside of that period. And the best single game, or our favourite game at least, of that time period. So those are our categories. We're gonna run through them in that order, and to make this more exciting and more dynamic for each other, we haven't told each other our picks. So we're gonna be revealing those to each other as we reveal them to you. So
the horror as to how wrong,
the embarrassment, yeah,
the selections will be genuine.
Okay, so let's kick off then with probably the most objective of all of the categories on this list, which is most played. John, what is your most played game from November 2013 to present day?
So, I mean, I've got a bunch of games here. I'll just list off a few, but then I'll say which one I believe is the one I've played the most. So, Sea of Thieves, Stardew Valley, Apex Legends, Project Cars 2, Monster Hunter Worlds, and Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn. I know that came out in 2013, but, I played it in 2014 onwards. But I think actually the game that I've played the most is Friday the 13th, which is probably not a game that's appearing on many people's best of the generation lists.
I think that's fair to say, and I think because I've played minuscule seconds of this game. So, what I understand of it is kind of the buzz around it, but also that it's kind of considered to be something of a rough diamond. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's super buggy. Like, if that's what you mean. Literally, like the people I play it with, it does help to have people to play it with. It's not a game I really ever play alone. I have a very short amount of time with it alone, solo. It's really a multiplayer game. Well, it's just only a multiplayer game, but it's a social game, play with friends. But yeah, we've always got this joke that pretty much literally, even though I've played it so much, literally every time you play it, every time you turn it on, there's a new bug. There's a bug you've not seen before. It's just unreal. Like it just happens so much. Like whether it's a server issue, an actual game-breaking bug, a menu screen that doesn't go away, a loading icon that doesn't go away for like the entire time when you turn it on. Like it's just so buggy. Like it's absolutely unbelievable. But
that's got to be also a strength, right? There, it's like it keeps finding new ways to surprise you, which is
exactly
a pleasant thing.
It's original. Each time you play it, you don't know what you're going to get. But at its core, the core gameplay it's just brilliant. Like just the concept of a bunch of counselors trying to run away from Jason. Jason's like super powered compared to you. He can really easily kill you. You've all got to work together to perform certain tasks and objectives, like fixing the car up, fixing the boat up, and you can leave, or finding the fuse to put in the fuse box. So you can call the police, and then a timer counts down, and they'll come and find you. It's got this really cool system as well where you can't talk to each other unless you pick up a walkie-talkie, and only the people with the walkie-talkies can talk to each other. I mean, we kind of break that rule in the game because we're on Discord or whatever.
So the in-game chat only supports chat if you found walkie-talkies. Is that the intention of it?
Yeah.
If you weren't using Discord and you're just using the communication in game, that's really cool. That's a really cool kind of thematic nod to the fiction. Now, but which version of Jason is it that you're running away from? because there are
Well,
many
it's all.
other.
Yeah, I mean, there's different. I mean, he's got different skills.
Okay.
You can pick different skills that he's got. So sometimes some people have the sprint, some people don't, and whatever. I don't really know too much about Jason's skills because I never play as Jason. I play as Jason like twice. I'm just always a counselor. Okay. I just don't enjoy playing as Jason at all. But yeah, it's just the whole vibe that the game creates is just. It's just, and you get to like it. You get to like the bugs. Like it becomes like your thing, you know. Like it's almost like the problem child or something in the family. But it's like your problem child. Like it's the one that like you found, and it's the one that like you're taking care of. Like
yeah, love them anyway. Yeah,
yeah. And we're still playing it. Like still played it. Still play it at least a few times a week.
So Friday the 13th, and so it's a game, it's an asymmetric multiplayer game. You've played it probably more than any other game, and yet you've experienced basically half the game, like one side of the game, in that you're not kind of splitting your time between Jason and the counselors. You're just being
I don't like playing as Jason at all.
Yeah. So there is theoretically like a whole load more that it could give if you got into the Jason side of it. Then it could just have another lease of life, basically. So that's okay. I mean, that's got to be the sign of a, if not technically brilliant, at least a brilliant game that it gives you that much.
It's just a great idea. Yeah, and the same team went on to make the Predators.
Mm-hmm.
For Sony, which was nowhere near as good.
As well received.
Same idea, like asymmetrical. One person's a predator, the other people are the military grunts, but. Yeah, nowhere near as good.
Okay.
Okay, that's probably enough on Jason, Friday the 13th. What's your most played? Is it something a bit more, commendable?
Well, it's. I don't know that it's. It probably is technically more sound, more stable at least. And it's a game that I started playing. I think I started playing it on iPod. Possibly iPod Touch, I think, and I now play it across phone and PC and laptop. And it's Hearthstone, which was released 2014, and now this is one of those games, as you were saying, this is one of those games that I don't have kind of quantifiable metrics for it, and there is some pretty stiff competition because I do have Steam stats for other things like. Certain games in the Civilization series I've played hundreds of hours of, but Hearthstone is
I thought you were going to say Civilization.
Well, yeah, I mean that I think if I was going purely on games that I've got measured time for it probably would be, but even then it would be Civ 5, which was actually last generation. So but anyway, Hearthstone is the game that and it's an odd one for me because I was trying to think of another game that I have long periods of time away from, but then still play. I have periods where I go through it and I'll be playing it, daily. And I don't know that there is another game like that I have that I've been playing for that length of time and repeatedly go back to.
What is it that you play on? Do you play on iPod or iPad or something? iPod. Who's got an iPod?
I used to have an iPod Touch once upon a time. Most of the time now, I think I probably play on my laptop. My laptop's one of those, like, it's that hybrid thing that you can fold back on itself to basically make it like a big tablet.
Yeah.
So I think probably primarily on that. I actually deleted it. It was on my phone, and I deleted it from my phone because I was just playing it too much. Like, I'd go down to make a cup of coffee and then like start playing it. It's like, well, this isn't, a game of Hearthstone can be super quick, but it can also be too long when you're just having a quick break from work. So I deleted it from my phone. It's kind of that kind of game, or has been that kind of game for me. But yeah, I keep going back to it. I always look forward to whatever the next expansion is, which these days they're doing 3 of those a year. And yeah, it's just I don't have a lot of friends who play. I don't play it with friends. I just play against strangers, and yeah. But it's the game that keeps.
So do you play like the seasons? Do you sort of have a goal in mind, a rank in mind for each?
Not really. I mean, the thing is the slightly. I mean, I guess embarrassing. I'm not embarrassed by it, but it could potentially be embarrassing. Is that I don't think I'm particularly good at Hearthstone, despite the fact that I've played it probably more than any other game in the last 7 years. So I don't aim for kind of the super leagues of like the legend rank that you can get up to. If I'm getting somewhere in the gold, sort of high golds, low platinums, I believe it is now, because they recently changed the ranking system, then I'm quite happy with that. And sometimes I just like having a quirky deck that I try out, and I just sort of will play that. And it's not a top tier deck. I'm not net decking. I'm not like going and finding decks online to play. I'm just sort of throwing things together that I think seem like they might work. Sort of really like combo decks that require so many different pieces to work that it's quite hard to make it work, but when it does, it feels super satisfying. So yeah, Hearthstone is I think my most played of the last 7 years.
Okay, well, I think it's going to be a long episode. We've still got five categories to get through. So most impactful then. So, do you want to kick this off? What's the game that's been most? Well, how have you interpreted most impactful?
Yeah. So this is I mean, I've taken most impactful to mean varying different things. So I picked a bunch of kind of shortlist games, things like Breath of the Wild, things like Death Stranding, things like Papers, Please, DayZ, Slay the Spire, Into the Breach, a bunch of games. But what I settled on was possibly a more sort of traditional notion of impactful in the sense that it had the biggest effect on me, and that is The Last of Us Part 2. I
am utterly shocked at that pick.
Indeed. Well, there is no surprise in that regard. It's that that I loved it. I mean, it was a game that it is a game I've played through a couple of times by this point. I think I could be on a third playthrough, but I've kind of finished my second.
What difficulty are you going? What do you play
it's the one below Grounded, so it's basically the second hardest. And that was something that I started on that because I remember that from carrying over from the first game, that as much as I loved the first game, in many ways more than the second one, but I remember it being, I wanted to kind of really buy into this notion of struggling to survive, and so not finding a lot of resources. Yeah. And I remember on normal on the first game, there were just too many. You would just end up with a glut of resources, and you'd have to be using stuff just to then be able to pick up the stuff that's in front of you. So I put it on a harder difficulty.
I never found that. I'm just not good at The Last of Us at all. I always had about 4 bullets and 1 bandage or whatever. And it's, oh my God, so now there's 9 enemies. Oh God, see you later.
And in terms of the impact there, I mean, it is something I probably know the systems of the game very well, which helps in terms of that, in terms of kind of performing at it. And in terms of impact of The Last of Us Part 2, it was, I mean, honestly, it's like I'm in love with the characters. It's a game that made me sob. It's also, as probably an insight as well, my daughter's name is Ellie, and that's not completely coincidental. I don't know that I would tell my wife that my daughter's named after a video game character, but it's not. It's not completely coincidental that her name's Ellie. So yeah, it's just a game.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think a lot of people will be able to empathise with that.
And a lot of people did not like it, and that's even that is part of what made it kind of so impactful for me. A lot of the discussion around it, the fact that Naughty Dog were willing to take risks with it, the fact that the first time I played it, there was stuff that I really didn't like. I didn't like being forced to play as Abby, but that's the point. And so, yeah, that is my most impactful game of the last 7 years. Is one that came out really not that long ago at all. So by contrast, what's your entry for this, and how have you interpreted this?
Well, I don't know if it is well, I struggled to interpret this, actually. So my shortlist for this is very long. So, okay, so I'll just go through the shortlist. So, PT, which I know is only 10 minutes long. PT, Firewatch, Persona 5, Divinity 2, The Last Guardian, Disco Elysium, Resident Evil 2 Remake, Hellblade, Sea of Thieves, What Remains of Edith Finch, Phasmophobia, which I know has only just come out, but literally that game has had an impact on me. I can't sleep at night now. The electricity bill is so high in our house, I just got to sleep with the light on every day, all day. Not all day, all night. But I've actually come back to something more traditional, and it's also a Sony game. I think God of War is my most impactful. And I don't know, there was a part of me, kind of like the hipster part of me, I suppose, that really didn't want to pick like a AAA game, but for this, but I don't know, God of War, it's just kind of undeniable, the impact. Like, I think one of the things, like, not just its inherent quality, like it's kind of intense and it's also gentle, and the action is amazing, and the progression systems and the narrative and all that stuff is amazing. But it's just sort of outside of that, just looking at it from the bigger picture, is so impressive. And I think one of the things that really made it had a big impact on me was that it showed that AAA games really can, you know, they're often criticised for being a bit safe. They play it by numbers a bit. But God of War completely changed up the formula from the previous games. It locked it into much more a relationship-based story. The progression was much different. Like everything about it was different. But it retained the core essence of what made the, you know, that big crunching action is still there. Kratos is still like a badass, but you know, he's a bit more human in this one.
So it had a greater impact because it was part of an existing series. Is that right? Like, because there were things that had come before it and set a certain expectation and set a tone. That helped, and because it kind of showed that AAA games can move with the times. They can be dynamic. They can try to do something else, even when they've established this thing that has clearly worked for them really, really well. It wasn't afraid to try to, you know, be a bit daring, to change the rule book a little bit, and I really respect it for that. And you know, just in its own right, as I said, it's just a phenomenal game. Like, you don't have to have played the other ones. You might not have that perspective on it if you didn't play the other ones, but you definitely don't have to have played the other ones to, you know, that perspective isn't the only way to enjoy the game. So God of War for me, and as I said, like I really did. I was trying so hard to think of more reasons. Like, so Firewatch, I think, was probably the second place, and I was trying to think of more reasons to have Firewatch be like the number one, just to, you know, be a bit cooler about it. But yeah, I don't know. It just came to it. You just can't really deny for me. I couldn't really deny the reality that God of War. Just kind of killed it. Like every hour I was playing that game, it was just like there's just no filler in that game. Like, there's just no, even like, you know, once the credits roll, there's still so much to do, but it's meaningful stuff to do. It's not just like box ticking exercises to like level this up or achieve 100 of this or collect 10 of that. Like, it's, you know, the post credit stuff, the post game stuff. Is really good. Like, and it adds more to the story. It adds more stuff to the whole thing. Like, everything in that game's just, there's just no filler in that game. Okay, so two most impactful then for both of us. Two big AAA games, as you say. Two both Sony games. Sony, console exclusives at least. So moving from the most impactful individual game, what has been your favourite trend of the last 7 years of this generation, and how have you interpreted that?
Yeah, and it's really about what gamers are given, I suppose, is how I've interpreted this. So, early access, free to play, remakes and remasters. So, you know, things like Grim Fandango, Shadow of the Colossus, Catherine, Final Fantasy VII remake, Resident Evil 2. And Battle Royale as a genre. And Battle Royale as a genre is, I think, my favourite trend, my favourite sort of new addition to the gaming sort of zeitgeist, like ecosystem, you know, reality. Yeah, and because Apex Legends is one of the games that I've played the most, and I know Battle Royale is largely shooters, Fortnite, Apex, PUBG, Warzone. But Fall Guys more recently as well has kind of shown that you can do other things. And I think the thing that I like with Battle Royale is that it's going to get very like art schooly here, but so let's take Fortnite as an example, which is, I played a bit of PUBG before Fortnite, but Fortnite was the one that really was the Battle Royale game I really started playing a lot before I moved on to Apex. in Fortnite, you go down, you drop in, and there's 100 players, and you're having an individual. If you're playing in solo, you have an individual story that's yours, and every single other person is having an individual story that's theirs. But there's also 100 people sharing the same story as well. So everyone's got the same reality, and everyone's got the same kind of set, and everyone's got the same location. But there's 100 unique stories going on there. They're all equally real and all equally meaningful because they all have an equal weight in terms of crafting the reality of that 100-person joint story. You know, like even if one person ultimately wins, so you could argue that that person's story is more important than the rest, but it's not really, because that person can't get to the end of their story without engaging in the other stories as well, or you know, the person that they kill is engaged in the other person, so everyone's connected. So I really like that, and just, you know, like the pacing of it, to be just a bit more gameplay focused on it. You know, the pacing, the resource gathering at the start. Sometimes there's a little mad rush because you've dropped down next to someone else and you're both really low on gear, and who can get that first kill, and you know, does that set you up for the round going forward? You know, can you loot that whole area by yourself if you get that first sort of, you know, crazy kind of thrashy kind of unpredictable kill at the start. Yeah, and it's just like every time a new battle royale game comes out, I'll not necessarily play it, but I'm definitely intrigued by it, and I'll definitely at least check it out. I'll watch a bunch of stuff on it before kind of delving in. I suppose the drawback of them is that in order to be good at them, you really have to focus on one, because the meta of the game changes quite quickly. So you very quickly kind of fall out of the knowledge base of how to play them if you don't constantly play them.
And this is something that you alluded to a couple of episodes ago on the podcast, because that was a games that you love but wouldn't play again, and one of your picks for that was Apex Legends, right? And for those reasons that you're describing, that it's something you played a tremendous amount of and then kind of fell off for other reasons just for a short period of time, and then the idea of getting back into it and the mental investment that was going to take was kind of too big a better obstacle to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, certainly Fall Guys is a bit different because it's much less complicated, and you can kind of keep up the data, the tactics and stuff pretty easily on Fall Guys with just a YouTube video or two. But Fortnite, Apex, Warzone, PUBG, any of those, you really have to invest. You have to invest a lot of time. If you want to win, anyway, like you know, if winning's your goal, if you're just playing it socially with friends and it's, you know, you're just all in there having a good time, then it doesn't really matter as much. But yeah, if you really want to win, time investment, time sink is a big one. And like playing a battle royale game, a lot of invariably does mean you play fewer games overall, because you've really got to focus on it. I'm guessing that you're not going to say battle royale games as your favourite trend, given that you're any game involving a gun for you, apart from Last of Us, seems to be a challenge.
Well, that I mean, I can't take offence at that. That is true. That is absolutely true. No, I'm not going to pick battle royale. I'm going to pick something that is tangentially attached or kind of in relation to that. And it's I didn't have as many. I don't think I had as many on my shortlist as you. One of my strong runners-up was console VR. And really, when I say console VR, I'm talking specifically about PlayStation VR. And even more specifically, when I say PlayStation VR, I'm really just talking about one game, to be honest. Maybe a couple, and that would be Beat Saber. And so, and that's just sort of a thing because of the number of people in my family that have played it, the experiences we've had with that without having console VR in particular for my setup, I wouldn't have been able to have those experiences. But it stayed in second place because I think my actual favourite trend is the maturing of free to play. as a business model, as a concept.
Still a dirty word to a lot of people, a dirty phrase to a lot of people.
It is. But I think what's interesting about that, and this is why I think it is my favourite trend of this generation, is that it's come such an incredibly long way. I mean, it has its roots much, much further back, a couple of decades back. But it's only over the last 7 or so years that it's really started to move away from, for the main part, what was once considered to be a very, free to play was basically just another way of saying, like, it's a very cynical, cash grabby type of experience where it's...
Well, it was embodied by mobile games first, right? Like Candy Crush and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Which and use psychological tricks to keep
exactly.
you
There was this loop in place, this pretty transparent, really, this pretty transparent, psychological trick to keep you hooked, to keep you going back to it, and ultimately to get some money out of you.
Yeah, and it's the fear of loss, isn't it? That's what they often play into.
Exactly,
humans' fear of our fear of loss is greater than our desire to gain. Often,
and so for it to move from that, to see it go from being something that immediately turns a great number of people off, and for it to go from something where even the way it's being written about is, there's a new game in XYZ franchise, but it's free to play, and it becomes this it just becomes this stand-in for that this is going to be low quality, it's going to be cynical, it's going to be rubbish. For it to move from all of that into being something that we now have as gamers, we now have very high expectations of. It doesn't mean the same thing that it used to, and it's now, and it feels like there's a confidence, or just perhaps it just needed to go through some of the phases it's been through in order for developers and publishers to have confidence in it as a business model and say, do you know what, we don't have to employ those tricks necessarily. We don't have to have this fear of missing out. We don't have to have this fear of loss. We just need to make something that's amazing and is a positive experience, and people will actually want to play it and be involved, and part of that may or may not, involve paying money. And so and it also ties in with my most played game, which is Hearthstone.
Well, and so we've also seen games going free to play as well over time, because I wanted to mention Rocket League in here somewhere, because it is one of my favorite games of this generation, but it's not gonna make the cut as a final pick on any of these. But Rocket League, I think, is a great example of a game that's now gone free to play. And offers so much. Like, it's just still absolutely brilliant.
And things like Overwatch as well, like a big budget, shooter, high profile shooter like Overwatch that released as a fully paid game is now a free to play experience. So that's, I think there's, it's very specifically that maturing of free to play as a business model, I think has done a lot for the gaming landscape. And I think we could probably all stand to keep that in mind with other things, with like looking at certain other trends and certain things where the knee-jerk reaction might immediately be that there are so many more bad examples of this than there are good examples, that it can, given enough time and given enough reaction as well. I think, people vote with their wallets, but they can also be very vocal online, and there's been a refinement process that hasn't just been about the developers and the publishers getting it right. It's been about the players as well, saying this does work, this doesn't work, and helping. I think they've helped refine it into what we now have when we have, the likes of Apex and Genshin Impact and these other huge impactful free to play games. So it's been nice to see that happen. It's kind of dragged itself out of the doldrums into this bright new age.
Okay, we're going to take a very short break and we'll be back soon with our final 3 categories. Okay, we're back. So, what we've got left, favourite new IP, favourite legacy franchise, and best overall game. So, Stace, best new IP, what have you chosen?
Best new IP. I've got a few honourable mentions. Darkest Dungeon is on there.
I thought that was what you were going to choose. Wow, I won't say the other one. I don't want to spoil.
Yeah, Darkest Dungeon was a contender, definitely. There is also a board game coming out of that, interestingly. Interesting to me, at least. Darkest Dungeon. Horizon, as in Horizon Zero Dawn, was another. But the one that I've finished on is a game that I'm still playing. It came out very recently. The 1.0 version came out very recently. It's a game that I'm still playing 90 odd hours later, and that is Hades.
That's the other one that I wasn't sure if it was going to be Hades or Darkest Dungeon.
Yeah, Supergiant's Hades is I've been playing a lot of. I am now a significant number of completions into, I think, 12 or 13 completions I've racked up, and there's still new stuff to uncover. I'm still getting a lot out of the narrative side of it, as well as the combat and the feel of it. I mean, it is just a beautifully put together game. The art is fantastic. The writing is fantastic. The narrative, the systems, the way that they interlock together and bolster each other, and it's just a fantastic piece of work. And I don't know. I mean, I'm sure at some point I will move on from it, but at the moment it is the game that I play
at some point. You'd hope.
So yeah, I won't just be stuck on one game forever. Yeah, but yeah, Hades is it's and I've enjoyed like Supergiant's. I think of their other games, Transistor was probably the other one that I enjoyed the most. Now, a lot of people would go to Bastion.
I'd go to Bastion.
Yeah, and I understand. I think Transistor. Yeah, it was something about the way that was put together as well. The idea that there was two playthroughs were kind of the expected. That was how you completed the game. That was how you got the most out of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Pyre I've kind of only really touched on. I've not played too much of that. But Hades, yeah, I just feel like Supergiant as a relatively small studio as well. I think that just makes that doesn't really. I don't know that really earns any points in terms of it being my favourite new IP, but it's definitely there definitely has to be a nod to them for
it
achieving
adds to
so
the
much.
achievement of it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It really does. Yeah. So yeah, Hades, and I know that you've played a decent amount of or some Hades as well, and kind of share a certain number of the things that you enjoy about it, like I do.
No, brilliant game. It was on my shortlist as well. Hasn't made it, but it was on my shortlist.
And we talked more about that at length, didn't we? We had a whole episode on why is Hades so good.
Yes. Plug last week's episode. What makes Hades so good? If you want to listen to 30 minutes of why Stace chose Hades for this, you can go back and download that.
And the two things that we could come up with that are wrong with it, they're in there as well. The whole two things, which were nitpicking, to be honest. Yeah, so Hades wins it. I mean, it's a game that I want to get some art from it to grace my walls. I think it's fantastic. So
yeah, it's interesting you've chosen a game from this year. I wonder if there's an inevitability about that. I wonder if it's a case of games are 7 years on nearly from November 2013. So maybe, there's an argument to say game makers now have 7 years more collective experience than they did in 2013. So lessons learned would, add to something greater.
You can definitely see, yeah, I mean, there is definitely a pun incoming. You can definitely see a standing on the shoulders of giants kind of...
another trademark pun.
Iteration that's gone into Hades' creation, but they've just refined, and it is, for me, it is I think quite assuredly the kind of the pinnacle of roguelike games. I bought Spelunky 2 at around the same time, just before actually, and I played a bunch of that, and then Hades came out, and I just haven't been back to Spelunky since. So Hades, favourite new IP. John, does yours follow the same kind of route? Is there that recency effect in play that you just mentioned?
Yeah, there is, but it's not quite as recent. So, I mean, Hades was on my shortlist as well. I'll just go through the other ones that didn't make it. So, Sea of Thieves. Sea of Thieves is a recurring thing here. Like, Sea of Thieves is high on my list in a lot of categories, but it doesn't just quite push it enough doesn't quite just push the pinnacle. Apex, Rocket League, Divinity, that's largely Divinity 2, Disco Elysium again, Firewatch again, also Neo. So the Souls games, I've never really got on with Dark Souls too much. Sekiro is probably the From Software game I like the most, but I think Neo, and particularly Neo 2 I think is the best Souls game that I've played. But my favourite new IP, I think, is the Ori game. So Ori and the Blind Forest, Ori and the Will of the Wisps. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, what about Hollow Knight? It's like, yeah, I know Hollow Knight, and it's great. And it is very good, so don't get me wrong. But for me, I like, aside from games, like I really like Studio Ghibli. I like Disney stuff. And Ori and the Will of the Wisp has that kind of embodiment of that kind of fantasy, that fairy tale, those kind of warm and cuddly, like things that start off warm and cuddly but actually turn into pretty severe and nasty kind of tragedies.
Like life. It's a reflection of
like life. And then so they've got that kind of essence in both the narrative and in the visuals, but they've also got the gameplay quality as well. And I know that everyone's going to be thinking Hollow Knight, and I know Hollow Knight's a bit more precise in the combat and all of that stuff, and the bosses are better designed in in Hollow Knight, and they are, and I don't disagree with that. But it's just the whole package for Ori, like the welcomingness of it, just that sense of wanting to explore, just wanting to see the world purely for the visual element, if nothing else.
So is there a distinction to make? Can you make the distinction? I mean, you mentioned Hollow Knight there a couple of times on almost kind of making concessions to Hollow Knight. Well, yeah, do you think Hollow Knight is a technically better game, or I mean, can you even distinguish between sort of the fact that it's Ori is your favourite? Is it better?
I think Hollow Knight. I wouldn't say Hollow Knight is a technically better game. I would say it's a technically more precisely designed game. Mm-hmm. So it's more severe in. This move does this action does this boss does this. It's very very finely cut, that game. Like it's very polished in terms of the animations and the actions that you can do. It's very sharply designed, incredibly sharply designed. Ori is a bit more kind of loose. The movements are a bit looser, the jumping is a bit looser, the running and just walking around, the attacks are a bit looser, so it doesn't have that like precision of like, okay, I will now go and do this thing, and I will wow everyone with just how brilliantly, like frame by frame, I've dominated that scene. You can do that, of course. You can do that in any game, but Hollow Knight lends itself more to that kind of play. But it's just all the surrounding stuff with Ori. It's that sense. I find myself much more eager to explore and uncover the world in Ori, to meet the people there, the friendly characters there, to kind of see that relationship between the characters, which is very thinly created, and a lot of it is left to your imagination, and then there's a lot of environmental storytelling rather than just pure now A, B, and C happen like you're told. You really are shown rather than and it does reward you for kind of looking between the lines of that stuff, which I like. I keep making this concession Hollow Knight. It's not that Hollow Knight doesn't do that, but I think it just doesn't kind of grab me in the same way. It doesn't have that like mysticism, that kind of otherworldliness in the same way that Ori does. And also for me, like the Metroidvania style games, I'm not. I think one of the reasons why I've picked this is because I've not historically been a huge player of those sort of games, even though Ori and Hollow Knight I have played a lot of. So maybe that's a trend in this generation. The Metroidvania games are really good. Have sort of come to maturity, but I think that's another thing that's kind of surprised myself really with playing Ori, is that it's not the kind of game that I would typically play. But after Will of the Wisps was like a day one definitely in after playing Blind Forest. But even Blind Forest, I wasn't sort of expecting myself to love it.
So how did you come to it? Because do you remember how you first came to it? Was it because you'd heard good things about it, got good reviews, or was it the aesthetics that kind of attracted you to it to even pick it up in the first place?
Both. I mean, it's recommendations from other people. It's response online, critical, and from fans. You just want to check it out. Like people are talking about this game, like check it out. But I wasn't really expecting huge things to kind of check it out from a. Having to know, lots about game design and stuff for the jobs that we do, you need to kind of stay on top of things. So it's kind of playing it for that reason, playing it to stay knowledgeable about everything that's going on in the industry and what designers are doing. So I jumped into it for that reason. But yeah, like it totally changed my perspective. It's, okay, maybe I am actually missing out here. Like Metroidvania games, they can be some of the best games I've played recently. So it's a pleasant surprise, really. Like, and it kind of opened me up into new genres. And really, Ori and the Blind Forest turned me on to Hollow Knight. Really, I probably wouldn't have played Hollow Knight. Well, I probably still would have for the same reasons as I've just described. But Ori made me very curious about what Hollow Knight had. So even though I've picked Ori and I've spoken a lot about Hollow Knight, like they do kind of go hand in hand. But yeah, Ori just kind of nicks it a little bit just for that. But as I said, that kind of Ghibli, Disney, that whimsical sort of just essence that it has.
Okay. So from the new IPs to some of the more established, longer running, older IPs, the next category is favorite legacy franchise. So this is basically just a franchise that has existed prior to November 2013, and there's some. I think I can probably guess what yours is going to be for this, but we'll find out. What kind of things made your shortlist for this?
So my shortlist, so Bayonetta 2. Huge fan of Bayonetta 1. Bayonetta 2 I like a lot as well. It's not quite as good as Bayonetta 1, but I'm one of those fanboys of Bayonetta 1 that's like, nothing is ever going to be as good as Bayonetta 1. So it's kind of onto a losing battle. Resident Evil, I didn't love Resident Evil 7, but Resident Evil 2 Remake I thought was just absolutely outrageously good. And that alone is good enough. Devil May Cry 5 as well, I thought was just absolutely stunning. God of War, of course, we've already spoken about. Persona 5, I've mentioned. Also, Crash Team Racing and Crash 4, they're kind of like the surprise ones. So I didn't really expect, like, if you'd asked me like 7 years ago, like what would be your favorite Italian franchise, like Crash Bandicoot would not, would not make the cut. But both Crash Team Racing and Crash 4, Crash Team Racing especially, is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But I've got to say, for legacy franchise, Final Fantasy. And I've mentioned Final Fantasy 14 already, but Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 7 Remake is really what clinches it.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy 15, not that great. It's okay.
Final Fantasy 7, the Final Fantasy 7 Remake, I would say in the time that I've known you, that's probably, that I can recall, I think it's probably the most excited I have seen you or heard you talk about a game in terms of anticipation. Mostly that. I'm not even necessarily in terms of how good it is or anything like that, but in terms of the actual build up to that, the anticipation of that being released. I think that's so. Yeah, I'm not surprised that Final Fantasy's on. And you played a bunch of 14 as well, right? That was like quite a lot of.
I played a huge amount of 14. Yeah, I mean that's definitely on the list of like most played for sure. But yeah, Final Fantasy 7 Remake. So I know people might think like, but you said God of War was the most impactful. It's like, yeah, it is. But from a franchise perspective, like what new franchise am I most happy that it's come back? Like Final Fantasy VII. Like Final Fantasy VII is not a franchise, but it's almost like a mini franchise in itself to me, because I was 12 years old, I think, when Final Fantasy VII came out on PS1, and that is, I was at a very impressionable age, but I am like if I'm going to fanboy about any game. Final Fantasy VII is the one. Like, Cloud is the best hero. Ares and Tifa, the best heroines. Red 13 and Barret are like the best sidekicks. Like, just in all of gaming, like the end.
That's a wrap. That's it. We're done.
Like that's just the way it is, and it's just going to be the way it is forever. And Sephiroth is the best bad guy, like it's whatever, etc. So yeah, I mean, and I think really what it was for Final Fantasy VII Remake is the fact that it just wasn't bad. Like, it's like, okay, that's enough.
That's a relief. Yeah.
Like, and again, I suppose like God of War, maybe a little bit like God of War. Like Square Enix showed a lot of courage in really redesigning it. Like, a game that is so loved and so revered and set so many benchmarks and influenced so many people. They weren't scared about saying, okay, look, we can't just release the same game with better graphics. We really need to change it up here. And I don't agree with everything that they did. I still don't love like the kind of walking around, like sort of a lot of areas that can feel a bit empty and bits like that. But for the most part, it's on point. Like the characterization, the battle system, the way that they've kind of changed the story. Then they have changed the story in ways that I know that people are not happy with, but I like it. Like, and I see it as less of a remake, and I actually think the name remake kind of does it a disservice, because it's really a reimagining. Like, it's almost like taking the original concept, the original narrative concept, and reimagining it from that point. It's not really remaking the game as it was.
And this is, I wonder, like, it was a brave decision, but it was also, it seemed to me that Square Enix were canny in recognizing that as much as everybody had been clamoring for a Final Fantasy VII remake for years and years, that just re-releasing the same game with prettier graphics really wasn't going to cut it, because it's that thing of, the nostalgia thing, I think, or there is a potential trap there of, you think you have very fond memories of something, you think you want it exactly the way it was, and then you play it and you realize that things have just moved on. Like, as with anything, as with writing styles, as with filmmaking techniques, things just move on. And if you go back, you have to readjust your focus, and you have to just look at it through a different lens if you're going to go back to something like that. And so it seems like they avoided that trap of not just saying, well, here, you've asked for it, here it is. They did put the time and the effort and the money into, and as you say, reimagining something for, here's Final Fantasy VII, but for this generation.
Yeah. And they've done some interesting things. I still do miss like just a pure turn-based battle system, but if I want that, I can play Dragon Quest or something like that, or any number of Switch RPGs, JRPGs. And yeah, I mean, I was going to be clever and put Final Fantasy VII Remake, clever anything, it's cool.
Outfoxed
I was going and I was going to put Final Fantasy VII Remake in best new IP, because it is the first game in a series of Final Fantasy VII remakes. I suppose that, yeah, I mean, that's a double-edged sword. Like, while I'm really glad that there's more coming, it also is a bit annoying that the game ends at the end of the Midgar section, and now we've got to wait. But in the long term, it's, if we get more Final Fantasy VII, then great. So
I wonder, would you be satisfied, do you think? Could you be satisfied by just that first installment? Does it, like, if they'd said, we're going to re-release this thing, or not even re-release it, we're going to reimagine this thing, but it's only going to be the first X number of hours, it's only going to be this section of gameplay, here it is, would that have kind of scratched the same itch? Would that have, is it necessary for your enjoyment of it that that there's the rest of the game coming, or could you have been happy with just that, do you think?
I don't think I don't think I would have been satisfied necessarily. I don't think I would use that word, knowing if it was the case that this was the only part that was gonna arrive. But I mean, I think since playing it, it has satisfied the itch in that I'm not as kind of my desire to play the next one immediately isn't as strong as I thought it would be, and that's not because this game was bad or disappointed me. It's that maybe in some way it has sort of satiated that Final Fantasy VII, wanting to consume Final Fantasy VII in a new way, wanting to see Cloud and Tifa and Ares, or it's called Aerith in this one, so the Americans, maybe, but I mean, ultimately, no, I still definitely want to play more, but it is interesting, definitely, to kind of observe of myself that, I'm not kind of desperately clamoring for, oh my God, I have to play it next week, otherwise, I just can't turn on the PlayStation otherwise, but no, I mean, end of the day, I'm super glad that there's more coming, and they've done a great job of it. It's brave, it's fresh, but it also keeps that essence. There are close to shot by shot recreations of bits in the first game, which, if you know it and then you see it and it's like, oh my God, well done, slow clap, Anyway, we've talked for an hour about Final Fantasy. So, legacy franchise, best legacy franchise of the generation. What have you?
Best legacy.
What have you gone for?
So short list. I have things like Zelda. I have The Witcher franchise.
I'm glad you're mentioning Zelda a couple of times, because I can already feel the heat that Zelda hasn't already won every single category from some people.
Yes, it has certainly topped numerous Game of the Generation lists that I've seen. Well, specifically Breath of the Wild, I'm talking about with that one. But yeah, in terms of a returning franchise, Zelda, absolutely. I mean, it definitely gets a nod. The Witcher was was definitely a contender for me. Zelda perhaps wasn't sort of, I wouldn't say second spot. The Witcher I would probably put in second spot. But also with certain other things like XCOM and Hitman as well. They're probably further down the list, but there's definitely, I am interested to see new entries in those franchises. I pay attention to them. I do seek them out. I'm interested to know what direction they're heading in. So, but the actual my favorite legacy franchise, as an entire franchise, is
the suspense is real.
Get ready, drum roll. It is Civilization, and specifically, I mean, Civilization 6 is the only main entry series that has been released in this generation. Civ 5, which is probably the one, or is the one rather, that I've put the most time in. To Civ 5 was 2010, so that's very much so previous generation. But yeah, it's taking something that I think it's going on that ride with Firaxis and with Civilization, and watching them take something in Civ 4 that was very much beloved, and the way that they kind of honed it over several years, and it was for me, that was the pinnacle of that style of Civ. But then 5 went in a completely different direction, and there was what I think was considered to be something of a cardinal sin of unstacking the units. You could no longer have these massive stacks of doom just rolling over everything.
That was how I got through every game of Civilization.
That was just nuts. It was just that was ludicrous, in a fun, ridiculous way, and the unstacking of those units, and then also the unstacking of cities furthermore, so that now the cities take up more hexes, and that there's districts, and there's different buildings, and there's a whole thing.
That changed it wildly for me.
And not and I completely understand and appreciate, not everybody likes that. That led to me, it became a different type of game for me. It became more of a kind of a lean back kind of game, more of a. It was there was a relaxing of pace. Not that I've ever played a Civilization game at breakneck speed, because it's really not that kind of game.
Speed
energy drinks and all the rest of it. But it's a
sponsored by Jeezy.
It feels like there's this, alongside this unpacking, there's also this kind of slowing down for me. That's kind of that's the feel of it for me. It's not necessarily anything to do with the pace of the game or anything like that. And going back and playing Civ 6, Civ 5, I kind of contrast the first 100 turns of these games and that's what generally gives me the feel of what this is going to be to me. And it's definitely also, there's a big part of this that it's the game that my wife and I have played together the most by far. And it's a game that it has that whole experiential thing. It has that it used to be when when we lived in our first flat, we had the desk in the living room, and we used to sit side by side at the desk playing it on PC. That was Civ 4 and Civ 5. And then Civ 6 we've since got on Switch, and we play that on TV now, and we both have the game, so we play it like that. It used to be hot seat where you have to pass it from one to the other. So there's definitely like a emotional attachment to it, a fond memories element of it. But quite aside from that, just in terms of the design, I'm always interested to see where they're taking it and what they're doing with it. I'm also interested in franchises like that. I mean, Humankind is one that's kind of upcoming that I've got my eye on, because I'm interested to see if somebody can kind of take Civilization on at its own game and potentially beat it, or even just offer something markedly different that is worth investigating.
Would you like to see someone beat it, or would you like to see Civilization kind of beat itself? Because I know you've got Civilization is it's one of your favorite franchises.
I think probably. I mean that's a fair question. I think I suppose ultimately, because of the history that I've got with Civilization and the memories I have, I think I would ultimately like to see another game, another franchise, make it reassess itself a bit, push it in a different direction. But I would rather, I would rather just play the best game, but I would rather that best game be Civilization, for sure. Yeah. That's certainly, there's a lot of other notable contenders in that category for me, but yeah, Civilization and Civilization 6 is I think what's been that's created the fondest memories for me. It's been the thing that I've most enjoyed going back to this generation.
So do you play that solo, or do you play
No, not really. No, I mean it's almost exclusively multiplayer, and even then it's almost exclusively multiplayer, just me and Gemma. It's not really, I don't really play it a lot online. I think despite
Gemma being your wife.
Yeah, despite the sheer number of hours that have been put into that we have put into that, very few of those have actually been like competitive multiplayer. Because even when
is that a big part of it then? Is it that you two have got that thing to?
Yeah, I think it is
to share.
It is, yeah,
enjoy
it is.
Together.
And it's a game that it's a game that we can talk about. It's a game that we, if I were to tell her that Civilization 7's coming out, she would be excited about that. And she plays some games, not a tremendous amount, but a couple of Final Fantasy games and Dragon Quest and a few other games on Switch she plays. But yeah, that's there's definitely the shared history, the emotional attachment part of it is a big part of why that's my favourite returning franchise. That leads us.
We've come to the big reveal, the big moment, the best game of the generation. So who wants to go? Which of us?
I'll go first on this because mine is a game that I have already mentioned.
Okay. So I've purposefully.
You've got a whole new.
I've held back from mentioning it,
and
I have mentioned it actually, but
sure,
in passing.
So mine is a game that has featured as my pick in a previous category, and it is The Last of Us Part 2. And for many of the reasons I talked about it being my most impactful game, that is a huge part of why it's also my favourite game. I mean, I understand the criticisms of it. I understand the detractors, but some of that it kind of just makes me love it all the more that it has split opinions so much, that Naughty Dog was willing to take this cherished thing that it created that kind of came out of nowhere in 2013. I mean, The Last of Us 1 only really just missed being this generation in terms of time, at least. It was, it was like June, I think, June 2013, there or thereabouts. So
yeah, and then the remaster came out pretty quick on
the remaster
PS4.
was the following year, and I went to that. They did a one night live thing in Santa Monica, which was kind of the actors on stage doing certain scenes from the game. Neil Druckmann, the game director, along with Bruce Straley, but I think Neil was the only one that was there at that time, was on stage talking about different scenes. There was like a secret scene that they showed after the cameras had stopped rolling because it was streamed as well. But after they switched the cameras off and then showed what was effectively a secret scene, which was apparently going to be the end of the original Last of Us, but then they kind of repurposed and made it one of the opening scenes of the sequel. So all of this, I mean, this all plays into, and as I've mentioned already, my daughter's name is Ellie. Yeah, and The Last of Us Part 2 is just a thing that I will. It occupies a different space for me in my brain. It's sort of I don't know that I would say it was fun. I don't know that I would say I had fun playing it. I enjoyed playing it, but I didn't have fun playing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it floored me, and it was something that I will go back to and.
So, what did you think of it compared to Last of Us 1? Right,
I think it was.
Is there a means of comparison?
I think it was a braver game, as I've mentioned. I think in terms of the risks, I mean, and it could only be that. It could only really be brave via comparison with the first game. Like the fact that they'd built the first game up, there was this dynamic of Joel and Ellie, and then to take that, and it wasn't so much. I understand a lot of people were bothered greatly by Joel dying. It wasn't, spoiler alert, it wasn't so much really that Joel died, because I already I'd assumed that was going to happen, because in the build up to the release they've been talking a lot about how it was kind of Ellie's, if the first game was about love, then this game was about hate, was kind of the sort of the buzzwords, the tagline they were using in talking about it, and this dark journey that Ellie goes on. And it seemed like, well, what is it that would drive Ellie to go on a journey like that? As well, somebody killing Joel would make her do that. So when that happened, I certainly wasn't particularly shocked by that. It was more the bigger impact for me.
Did you think it was a good moment though? Did you think it was like narratively?
At the time that I saw it, I think the first time I saw it, I wasn't satisfied, and I think I'd explored that a bit afterwards, and I think it's because it felt like it was quite a blunt. I mean, he literally gets beaten to death with a golf club, but it was quite a blunt moment. I think what I was probably looking for was like some sort of heroic death, it felt sort of almost ignoble that he'd been just beaten to death, and
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to ask you. Do you think that a lot of people's frustrations with Joel dying and that element of the story is actually built on that Joel suffered a humiliating death?
I think it is, and that was certainly, I think, what caused a lot of the hate towards Abby, and unfortunately that spilled out into real life and everything else.
Yeah, and to clarify, I mean humiliating, not like it's not humiliating to die in that way, but it's humiliating for what someone who was built up as a hero dying at the hands of being kind of beaten in the dirt with a golf club. That's not how like a Hollywood would provide a hero's death.
There's no blaze of glory for sure, and I think, I agree. I think that was partly why there was a certain reaction to it, or some of that reaction was tied up in that, certainly. But that was sort of, that had an impact, but for me, on me. But it was more Ellie's journey after that. It was more. Honestly, I found it devastating. Like there was just times when I was playing it that I was like, I don't want Ellie to do this. I don't just stop going down this path. And I was having to do the stuff with the controller. It sounds very melodramatic, but it was how I felt like emotionally. I was like, I just don't viewing her basically as a real person. It was like, I just don't want you to put yourself through this and lose yourself in this way, which is basically the entire point of the game. So yeah, it is, and similarly, I guess with Final Fantasy, like I could definitely do an episode, a whole hour on this easily, talking about just my reaction to it, rather than sort of from an intellectual standpoint. That's a whole other thing, but what it has meant to me, what it does mean to me. That's why I have to pick a game that I've already picked, because otherwise I think I'd have to sort of manipulate the list so that most impactful was something else. So yeah, that's my game of the generation is The Last of Us Part 2. I am going to guess that your game of the generation is not The Last of Us Part 2.
No, it's not The Last of Us. I mean, I don't disagree with anything you said about The Last of Us. It's just that The Last of Us it just doesn't really do it for me in that same way. I find particularly, it's not the story. I do love the story. I love the presentation. It's the mechanics of the game. It's the mechanics in the stealth and combat scenes. I find them just, they just don't click with me at all. And they're just something to just get through rather than something to embrace and enjoy and kind of learn and whatever. I'm not undermining your pick at all. Like I can understand why and agree with what you said. But yeah, personally, it just doesn't click with me to that degree. And I wish it did as well. Like I really wish it did. I feel there's just too many hurdles to enjoy the bits I enjoy about it for me. But so I've picked a game that I haven't picked through any of my other categories. And there is a reason why God of War is the most impactful for me, but this game isn't. So my favorite, the best game of the generation for me is Divinity Original Sin 2, which is, I just can't say enough good about it. I mean, God of War might have been more impactful, but Divinity, for the reasons I've said earlier, but Divinity has this. So Divinity I enjoyed as primarily a multiplayer experience. After completing it in multiplayer, I then went back and played it in single player. And I think that's a big part of it for me. That while it has familiar elements from other similar RPGs of this type, sort of D&D kind of inspired, Baldur's Gate, inspired role-playing games, the fact that I could play it in that 4-player, 3-player actually, we played it in 3-player, one of us controlled 2 of our party members and then the other one had 1 each. You have a party of 4, maximum party size of 4. And the fact that it was multiplayer, it's that social thing, and that just made it so memorable and so stand out for me, in that it was this really rich, super deep world. Like the world is so reactive to you. Like I know a lot of people talk about The Witcher 3, and again, like people are going to be annoyed that we haven't picked Zelda, and people are going to be annoyed that we haven't picked The Witcher 3 as well, or Red Dead Redemption 2. Metal Gear Solid 5. Or Mario Odyssey, or whatever. But the fact that the world was so emergent and so complex in how all the conversation systems work and how the different mission structures work together, and that was only enhanced by playing it in 3-player. Because it wasn't just your responses. So you could try your best to role play 4 characters. It's like, okay, I'm going to role play the Red Prince as this, and I'm going to role play this one as this, and this one as this one as this, as a single person. But when you're actually there with other people, they are role playing those characters in their way. So this already super complex world has 2-3 more layers of genuine, enormous complexity added to it by playing with other people who are doing things where you're a bit like, I don't agree with that. I wouldn't have chosen that. But that adds a huge element of kind of extra unpredictability and curiosity to it, because you're not just in charge of anything. So it's just this incredibly complex soup to begin with, but everyone's seasoning it in their own sort of way, and you're not really sure where it's coming out. Sometimes you disagree with the outcome, and sometimes it's not disagree. Sometimes you like the outcome, and sometimes you don't like the outcome. It's not disagree or agree, because you always agree with the outcome. So, okay, yes, I understand why that happened, but you don't always like it. but the fact that you don't like the outcome adds more reality to the world. Like, it's supposed to be a hard world. Like, it's not. You're not supposed to like every events that happen. Some things are tough in that world.
It feels like a world that doesn't just exist for the player. Like, it's one of those classic examples. Right? It's not. It feels like people aren't just standing around waiting for you to come up to them and talk to them, and not in any sophisticated simulation way. They're not, it's not modeling people's daily lives, and they don't have this huge AI routine that they enact out. But it just feels like I remember playing it and feeling like it's a game that encourages you to think a certain way, or a different way rather, and just try things. And like, well, surely this won't work, but oh my god, it has worked. But and then the kind of the light bulbs that then go off in the, well, but wait a minute, if that worked, then maybe we could go back and try on this other thing in this other situation, because like all bets are off, kind of thing. Like, this isn't. It's almost breaking the traditional rules of what's expected of well, not just an RPG, but of a video game in many instances. Do you think is it the best for you? Is it the best like representation of role playing in that sense? Is it the thing that you believe the most in? And is that impacted by playing alongside 2 or 3 other people? Like, is that just a natural consequence of having other personalities involved and other decision-making entities involved?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that, but also the game allows you to genuinely play a role. So again, a lot of people are going to be comparing it to The Witcher in terms of its sort of systems and how you can enact it. But really, in the situ, you are playing as Geralt. And you are playing as him, and you're playing the role of Geralt. So you're not role playing your own character, you're role playing Geralt. And different Geralts might be slightly different, but really it's the same guy deep down. And it's the same in role playing games like JRPGs. Like in Final Fantasy VII, you're not role playing. You're role playing as Cloud. You're not role playing as the Cloud that you've defined. No. It's Cloud. Like the end. Someone else has written that for you, and that's great. Like, pre-written stuff is stunning if you're good at it. Like, there's a reason Shakespeare's popular still, because he's good at writing characters. Like, pre-written characters are often typically the best characters. And I'm not saying that the role that I played in Divinity, as defined by me, was like better written or had a better outcome or got through the journey in a more interesting way than the writers at Larian could have done. But it really empowers you to make your own decisions, right or wrong, good or bad. Like, it really makes your decisions. It makes it feel like your character is as much of a character as a pre-written character would be. Which I don't think many games do. I mean, Skyrim or Fallout, like the first, do not achieve that in my at all. Like, your character just feels like a shell of a person and just going through the motions. I mean, comparatively, because it's such a high bar that Divinity sets, so the comparison is always going to be difficult to achieve. It's not that Skyrim and Fallout are bad games. It's just that kind of, if that was the rules before about how you define your own presence in the world and your own character, like Divinity it just blows out the water. Like, it's well beyond what the kind of benchmarks were previously.
To put you on the spot somewhat, do you think, of what you've played of Baldur's Gate 3, do you think it has the potential to do greater things than Divinity 2?
I've not played I've not played Baldur's Gate in multiplayer yet, so I don't know. Baldur's Gate 3, definitely, it has the potential.
Does it give you the same kind of? I mean, you mentioned you haven't played it on multiplayer yet, so perhaps it doesn't give you the same kind of feel. But I guess, is it a game that you're excited to play in multiplayer? Is it a thing that you're? Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And the plan is to play it with the same people I played Divinity with soon. Baldur's Gate has a big, while it's Baldur's Gate 3's, so it's got a debt to pay to Baldur's Gate 2, and it's D&D 5e rules, it's got a big debt to that. But, I've played 15, 16 hours of Baldur's Gate 3 early access already, and the biggest debt is Divinity 2, without question. Like, Divinity 2 is... Anyone that's played Divinity 2 and played Dungeons & Dragons and played Baldur's Gate 2 will be able to see that Divinity 2 is the influence here. Like, it's D&D and Baldur's Gate 2... kind of inspired, but the foundation is Divinity, like 100%. And for that reason, because I love Divinity 2 so much, Baldur's Gate 3 is alongside Cyberpunk. Like, Baldur's Gate 3 is the game I'm most excited about. I think of the big games that are on the horizon. Baldur's Gate 3 is top of the list.
Well, we are now running the risk of perhaps going into a different episode for looking ahead to next generation, and given the length of this episode now, we should probably wrap it up before we stretch into that next generation of consoles.
Okay, there you have it. Our games of the generation. If you agree with us or if you disagree with us, you can come chat with us at Indie by Design. That's at Indie by Design on Twitter, Instagram, and on Facebook. And you'll also find a link to our Discord while you're there. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.